Hey Genderqueer chat, welcome to Tuesday. I'm Stacy. Before I get started, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Christina, who gave a shout out to me last week. So thank you very much, Christina. I really appreciate it. That's very cool of you. Our topic this week is transgender and genderqueer, I guess. So a viewer had a question. Basically, they want to know if, identifying as transgender, either, while identifying as genderqueer, or maybe going from genderqueer to transgender is basically wrong. First off, no, that's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with identifying however you want to identify. If you identify as genderqueer, great. If you identify as transgender, cool. If you identify as cis, that's cool too. If you identify as nothing, it's all good. So, some people may think that's wrong, but that's just their opinion. And my opinion is there is nothing wrong with however you choose to identify. So, now, that aside, a lot of people I've noticed will identify as genderqueer initially, and then they end up transitioning. And I think that happens because once you open yourself up to the possibility of all these different genders, and you open yourself up to freely explore gender, and once you start really thinking about gender more, I think the end result can be transitioning, and that's fine. A lot of people do that, and I think actually a lot of people on this channel, a lot of people who originally started this channel ended up transitioning. So it's pretty common, it's really nothing to, I would think be overly concerned with, that you identified as genderqueer and now you're feeling like you may be more transgender than genderqueer. I think that's just part of that journey, and it's that path that one person is on. And for other people, genderqueer isn't a stepping stone to transitioning, and I believe Joe said this earlier in the week. Other people, this is kind of it. A lot of people feel comfortable just living outside of the binary, and living somewhere along that spectrum, and not really identifying as male or female or anything specific. So again, nothing wrong with that either. Definitely nothing wrong with even entertaining the possibility of being trans, and then finding out, hey, maybe I'm not really transgender, maybe I really am genderqueer, or whatever. And really, sometimes I think it's so easy to get caught up on labels that it's easy to put yourself in a box. I think sometimes it's even easy for me to put myself in a box, and I really don't like boxes, but I do it sometimes anyway. I think it's just part of our society. People are just used to that. And I think some people do it without realizing, so sometimes I try to mentally sometimes catch myself putting myself in some genderqueer box, which is kind of weird and kind of missing the point. But, I catch myself doing it sometimes. So if the labels of transgender, genderqueer, cis, or any other labels, sometimes that can be kind of confusing, especially when you're trying to figure a lot of this stuff out. So honestly, I would just get rid of labels, do whatever you feel like doing, and don't really think about trying to label it in your mind. Now after you're comfortable somewhere, maybe think about a term that may describe that. It doesn't have to be transgender, it doesn't have to be genderqueer, it can be something completely different. It doesn't have to be a word, it can just, be a way where you can describe how you feel or how you identify to other people. So, again, if the labels, sometimes people just get too hung up on them, myself included. So, if they become an issue, just get rid of them and just be yourself, and, you know, just free yourself up to do that and explore whatever you need to, and just be who you're going to be, I guess. Also, before I forget, because I almost did, there are a good number of transgender people who still identify as genderqueer. Just because you're transitioning, or you may want to transition, doesn't necessarily mean that you're now living in that gender box, you know. So for example, if you are born female and you identify as genderqueer and you now feel that you may be more male, you know, that's fine, but you don't have to identify as male. You know, there are a good number of people who want to change their physical appearance because they feel it would more accurately match how they see themselves, but they don't identify completely as male or as female. They can still identify as genderqueer. They can identify as whatever they want to identify. So, you know, that's another thing to think about as well. Just because you may want to transition, or you're in the process of transitioning, doesn't mean you have to suddenly squish yourself into that box that you may or may not fit into. So just throw that out there. And yeah, I think that's all I had to say about that topic this week. I did want to briefly mention I went down to a gender identity center and over the weekend, and I just went in to kind of check it out. I thought it was pretty cool that that type of thing existed, so I went down there, and you know, it was pretty low-key. There weren't a lot of people there when I went, but stayed for about an hour and talked to some really cool people and got some information. So they seem to operate actually kind of a lot like genderqueer chat, so just face-to-face. So that was pretty cool, and a little bit different from the GLBT Center, which, you know, I mean, they do offer resources to transgender and genderqueer people, but they often lump anyone who's differently gendered together. So a gender center, you know, is more for just dealing with gender, you know, not sexuality. So it more caters to that. You know, they work, I think, in conjunction with the GLBT Center, or they seem like they do, but it's a completely separate thing. So, I mean, anyone who's watching, you know, if you're lucky enough to have some sort of facility that does have support groups or counseling or just resources for gender, I would highly recommend going and, you know, just checking it out, talking to some people, you know, just to see if you like it and see if you can find other people out there and connect to some people who, you know, may feel the same way that you do. So that was really cool. I would like to go back. And what else? Oh, yes, the bonus question this week. The bonus question is, do you have any unusual talents? Not really. The one of the things that came to mind is driving my girlfriend crazy. You know, that's a good talent. But I have to say that it's not really unusual, but more unexpected. I actually was an actor for about a long time. I forgot how many years, but it was most of my childhood. I was into acting, and I went to an arts high school, which was, you know, not as cool as Fame or anything, but I went to an arts high school, and then I even pursued it a little bit after I graduated high school. So I was into acting for quite some time, and I did get a couple of paid gigs, so that's cool. So technically I can say I'm a professional actor because I did, I was paid for a couple of shows that I did. Now, I wasn't paid much. I was paid maybe a total of, you know, $20, $25, but I was still paid. Money was exchanged. I can say I'm professional, technically. But yeah, I was very into stage acting. I did a few commercial auditions and movie auditions. One audition was actually for a part in that remake of Peter Pan that came out a few years ago. and another audition was for riding with boys in the car, or boys in the back of the car, something about boys in the car. I don't really know. Riding in a car with boys, my girlfriend just nodded. Riding in a car with boys. Drew Barrymore was in it, and it was actually shot very close to my hometown, so they were auditioning people in the area. So I didn't get any of it, but when I was a kid, I auditioned for an Oscar Mayer commercial. I didn't get any of it, and it was very strange acting in front of a camera because you have this huge machine that's very, very, very close to your face, closer than you would expect, and you have to stay in this little box that's marked off with tape, and you can't really move too much, and you don't really know your lines, and you're kind of reading and looking up and trying to have some sort of interaction with this other person and the person behind the camera, and it was very strange. But something I can say I did, and I did enjoy it. I still enjoy theater and other live performances, but it's nothing that I'm pursuing as a career at this point in my life. So I guess kind of unexpected, because I'm just kind of a weird, nerdy person, and I don't think, very introverted, and I don't think a lot of people would expect that I have acting as a big part of my background. And it's not unusual at all, but I wanted to take this time to show it off, only because I'm kind of proud of it. I painted this over the weekend. It's just a mouthful of teeth. It's actually my mouth and my teeth, but well, it's a mold of my teeth. And so I painted it. I tried to get it looking as realistic as possible. It was just a little project. It wasn't really anything, fantastic, but it did drive me a little bit crazy, and I got a lot better at detail painting, like right around here along the gum line, because I actually have very little patience for something like that. So, it's not perfect. There are a lot of, you can't really see, but, well, I don't know, maybe you can see all the flaws that there are with it, but there are some problems with it, but I'm proud of it. It's one of the better things I've painted so far. So I paint two. Again, not unusual, or maybe not unexpected, but I like it. I'm not naturally good at it, but I like it. It's a good pastime. Anyway, now that I've spent more time talking about hobbies and interests and things like that, more time than I think I spent on the topic, I am going to end this video, and I will see you all next week.